the Note, I'm Brian.
And I'm Nick.
There's obviously been a ton of drama, to say the least, related to the collapse of Telltale Games last month. Now we've got some new details about what went on behind the scenes.
And one of the studio's ex-employees is now calling for her fellow game developers to unionize after Telltale left most of its 270 employees without a job or even any severance.
Yeah, that fucking sucked. Meanwhile, we've also got some news about the future of the final season of The Walking Dead, which, as we all know, was left in limbo after Telltale's collapse.
So needless to say, there's been a lot of fallout from the death of the studio, which took the whole industry by surprise last month. And the fact that hundreds of employees were instantly let go without severance has led to calls for workers to organize.
One of the most visible ex-Telltale employees is Emily Grace Buck, who was a narrative designer at Telltale before its collapse. In the aftermath, she helped to popularize the Telltale Jobs hashtag to find work for laid-off staffers.
And recently she gave a presentation at the Sweden Game Conference where she gave some behind-the-scenes details into what went on during the final days of Telltale.
GamesIndustry.biz reported that she talked about previous layoffs that had occurred in November of last year. That was when Telltale cut about 25% of its staff. That was handled well, though, she said, with those employees getting severance pay, healthcare coverage through the end of the year, even a job fair to help them find new stuff.
But when the studio announced last month that it was closing down and getting rid of 90% of the remaining staff, CEO Pete Hawley told employees they had 30 minutes to leave the building. Oh, and they got no severance and 9 days of healthcare coverage.
I wonder why they want to unionize. In her talk, Buck said, "How do we start holding leadership accountable to the people who work for their company? How do we convince them to stop gambling with our livelihoods in an attempt to get more funding? Because quite frankly, at Telltale, that's kind of what happened."
She also talked about the possibility of unionizing, saying, quote, "I'm not going to say this is the only answer or even necessarily the best answer, but especially in the United States where your work is tied to your healthcare, I think we need to have a really serious conversation about potentially starting a union."
Buck also talked about crunch culture, meaning when staffers are forced to work long hours in the build-up to a game. That was definitely a fact of life at Telltale, she said.
Sometimes she said there would even be last-minute rewrites of a game, which obviously had big effects for the rest of the staff.
Oh, I can't imagine. Of course, we've seen a lot of controversy around crunch recently, especially after Rockstar Games co-founder Dan Houser said that some people worked 100-hour weeks in the lead-up to Red Dead Redemption 2's release.
He walked that back later, saying that it was just a small group of senior staffers working 100-hour weeks, but Buck wasn't buying that explanation.
No. In her talk, she said, "As a person who has been on that, quote, small team of lead writers and narrative designers redoing things, let me tell you that can be catastrophic for the rest of the team. We often at Telltale, after executive reviews, had to do 90% rewrites of the games." Holy shit, that is insane.
That's really stupid.
Yes.
But she went on to say, "We deserve a lot better than what this industry is giving us right now, and I hope that by listening to this talk, you're thinking about what's going on at your own company."
Now, speaking of Telltale, it's been reported that Skybound Games, which is owned by Walking Dead creator Robert Kirkman, is in talks to finish up the final season of The Walking Dead game.
And in a recent Reddit Ask Me Anything, the CEO of the studio gave a timeline for when he'd like to see the last 2 episodes released. Ian Howe said that he'd like to release episode 3 by the end of the year, which seems pretty ambitious, but in the AMA he said that episode 3 was close to complete, but there's still work to do.
As for episode 4, which would be the final episode, he said it was in pre-production, so lots still to do on that. Nobody is currently working on the game due to the ongoing legal discussions. He added that Telltale have been incredibly helpful in trying to make this happen quickly, and the staff that we've spoken to have been extremely enthusiastic about coming back to complete the game.
And that's been a huge part of all this, rehiring the original staff to finish up the game. Howe also addressed that issue, saying, "We haven't hired anyone yet, nor have we made any offers, because we're not at the stage where we can do that. It's a long process that unfortunately can only happen in a specific order. What we have as of today is a goal to complete the game with as many of the original team as makes sense, and that's only if those people want to come back.
So it sounds like there's some probably contractual issues, probably some things that need to be signed, but hopefully they can get the final season of The Walking Dead wrapped up. But more importantly, that all those people who lost their jobs at Telltale can find something new.
All this really illustrates how brutal the gaming industry can be on employees. And if we keep seeing closures like Telltale's, especially when hundreds of employees get dropped without any severance, that's really unfortunate.
Yes.
You can bet that calls for unionizing will only get stronger.
What do you guys think of this latest batch of Telltale news? What do you think of The Walking Dead getting finished up? Should game developers start talking about unionizing? Let us know in the comments.
And for all your gaming news, be sure to like this video, and if you're new around here, subscribe to The Know.
Better yet, check out our website, theknow.tv. We got all kinds of great stuff there.
And recently she gave a presentation at the Sweetest? But especially in the United States when where your work is tied to your health care, I think we need to have a... Sometimes she said there would even be last-minute rewrites of...